I'm here with Kertzman at Hammer Winblad office, right in Pier 23. It's very incredible to see the office here. I can see all the Alcatraz cruises shipping over there right after the window. But now we are talking about business and venture partners around here. So thank you for having us here. I'm very, very excited to be in this office. It's a huge pleasure.
Good. Welcome. It's good to have you.
So how are you doing and what do you do here at Hammer Winblad?
Well, first of all, doing very well, thank you.
Yes.
It's a beautiful day here. The sun is almost trying to come out over San Francisco Bay.
Yes.
But what we do here at Hammer Winblad is we are in the venture capital business, and we invest in startup companies. All the companies we invest in are, first of all, software only.
Yes.
We only invest in software, and we really only invest in enterprise software.
Okay.
And our primary sweet spot of investment is enterprise infrastructure software, the underpinnings of the glue that makes enterprise systems run. And so that's what we do. We've been doing that since 1989.
Yes.
Hammer Winblad, John Hammer and Winblad when they formed Hammer Winblad in 1989, it was the first venture capital firm to invest exclusively in software. That was very controversial when they did that. In the beginning it was, because people said, how can you invest in software? All of your assets go home at night. Because people were used to investing in manufacturing companies with plants and equipment and inventory. And what John and Ann recognized was software had very high gross margins and tremendous growth. And of course they were right and ahead of their time. So that's what we do here, and it's what we've always done. Next year will be our 25th anniversary.
Yes, very nice. And I know that you've been working here for 10 years, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And before that, you used to be a CEO. You had your own companies.
I was an entrepreneur, a founder, a CEO. Yes.
Yes. How was it like to switch from a CEO to a venture capitalist?
Well, in many ways it was straightforward and reasonably natural. In other ways, it was a challenge. So, first of all, I was my company that I started back in Boston, where I grew up, was called PowerSoft, and it actually was funded by Hammer Winblad in 1991, the first Hammer Winblad fund. So I've been part of the family here for quite a while.
Okay.
PowerSoft went public in 1993. We merged with Sybase out here in California in 95. I became the CEO of Sybase. Then I was the CEO of a company down in Silicon Valley called Liberate Technologies, which we took public. And so in 2003, I came here, having been the CEO of 3 public companies, a startup entrepreneur, and I came here partly because when I was a CEO, I had served on the boards of many companies as an independent director, sometimes startups, sometimes public companies, but often I served with venture capital investors on these boards of directors. And they always told me that they thought I would be good at venture capital, and that I would enjoy it. And so, sure enough, when I came here, I think that was true. Now, the part of what we do in venture capital, of serving on boards of directors, I was similar to what I had done before. So that part was not new to me. However, the part of venture capital of structuring investments and term sheets and all the fine points of art of venture capital was something that I didn't really know anything about. So I had to learn that when I came here.
Over again.
Yeah. Yes. Now, on the one hand, learning new things is great. It's very stimulating. On the other hand, when you've been CEO for almost 30 years, you don't feel like you're like a kid at the table. And to some extent, sitting here with my partners who are very experienced, I felt a little like that. But now, after 10 years, I think I know what I'm doing. Although part of what I enjoy about it is you're working with a variety of companies. You're always seeing new companies and entrepreneurs. And so you feel like you're always learning. I feel that way.
This is good. This is good. I always feel like I'm always learning all the time. So this is very good.
That's good. You're a little younger than I am.
Well, a little bit, let's say that I'm a little bit younger than Hammer Winblad itself. But it's okay. And do you felt intimidated when you came to board? Or no, it was like, this is a challenge and I have to go for it?
I wouldn't say intimidated. I knew the team here obviously very well from having been in the portfolio. No, I wouldn't use the word intimidated, but I was aware of what I didn't know.
Oh, good.
And,
it's a good start.
And I always think if there's anything I've learned over the years is that when you don't know, you should speak up and ask.
Very good. Yes. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Please tell me, explain me. Yes.
Yes.
This is honest, this is true,
Yeah.
this is good. And how many companies come here, not every day, but how many companies come here and go away? And it's not everyone that sticks here.
No, well, no.
Yeah.
In fact, we are like many venture capital
Yes.
firms, which is we see a lot of companies and we invest in a small number. So I don't know what there are hundreds of companies that we see, that we meet with. There's many others that email and that because they're not software companies, for example, we say we don't invest in hardware.
Sorry,
or
but
something.
no, yes.
Yeah, and there's many companies that are in the consumer internet where we don't invest in the consumer world. So the companies we actually do see and we have meetings with are probably several hundred a year. And I don't know, there's an average year, but we probably make 4 or 5 investments, new investments in new companies a year.
Okay.
And I don't think those numbers are very far off the rest of the venture capital industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you seek in an entrepreneur or in a team, in a startup?
Well, there's a number of things. And all of us here at this firm, we have 5 investing partners, and I think this is true at other venture capital firms, are all somewhat different. We
Yes.
have different things that we look for, different things that excite us. And so for me, one of the things I look for in an entrepreneur is I look for real commitments to the idea.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example of what is not commitment. So sometimes when people come in and they say, well, I am still working for my current company, fill in the blank of the company, but when I get funding, I will quit and I will then come to work full time at this. And
Pay attention to that.
yeah, that to me feels like you're not really committed.
Yes.
What
You
I
didn't jump yet.
Yeah, what I want to see in entrepreneurs is I want to see that they so strongly believe in the idea that they're pitching to me, presenting to me, that they are going to find a way to do it, whether I give them money or not, whether anybody else invests in them, they will find a way. Nothing will stop them. I like to see that in an entrepreneur. Another thing I like to see is, this may seem obvious, but I like to see an entrepreneur who has some experience and knowledge of the product area, the marketplace. I mean,
Yes.
that there are people who think, wouldn't this be a great idea, but they don't have any experience in it. Now, it's fine to do that if you get a partner, bring somebody onto the team who has that kind of experience. So I don't look for necessarily every entrepreneur to have that experience. Because we are Series A investors, when we invest early in a company, there's frequently a fair amount of new technology and technology risk. We love what we call science. We love companies and entrepreneurs that are solving really hard problems to solve. If it's an easy problem to solve, then it's probably going to be hard.
Enough.
Well, and it's ultimately not going to be defensible against competition if it's easy.
Okay.
So
yes.
we're looking for companies that are solving hard problems to solve. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're looking for them to solve those problems with technology. In other words, if what your idea is a different business model, but not new technology, then we're probably less interested in that. Other venture investors may feel differently, but we like people who have a lot of technology.
Okay.
So we like hard problems solved with technology, with software. We like them to be solving problems that customers understand that they have. In other words, you're going to have to sell this to customers, and if customers don't know they have this need, it's a lot harder to sell. If you have to first convince them that they need it, and then convince them why yours is best. So we like to, now, if we're interested in the company and in the idea, we will contact enterprise customers that we know, CIOs, IT professionals, to test whether or not they perceive that they have this problem. So, but we're looking for a problem, a hard problem to solve with technology, a problem that customers know they have, and finally, a problem that customers probably feel that they need enough that they're willing to pay to solve the problem.
Yes,
So,
this is very
because
important.
ultimately, we're going
Yes.
to want customers to pay for this technology
Yes.
and product. So that broadly is what we're looking for in the business and the technology. What I'm
Yes.
looking for in entrepreneurs, I mentioned the passion and commitment, but I also want to see a mix in an entrepreneur of somebody who will listen. That may seem obvious, but I have plenty of entrepreneurs come in here who I just can tell from the meeting and the dialogue I have with them, the conversation, that maybe their passion and their commitment overrides their listening because they think they know everything. Now, part of why you come to investors like us is because of our experience. So I've been a VC for 10 years, but I was an entrepreneur and a CEO for 30 years before that. I've got a fair amount of experience, and although, as I said, I'm always learning. And what I like in an entrepreneur is somebody who listens. I don't want an entrepreneur who does everything I say, because then I'm their boss. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be their boss. I want to be a director. I want to be an advisor. I want to help them. I have ideas. I have suggestions. But if a founder and an entrepreneur basically says in every board meeting, well, what do you want me to do? That's
No,
not what I
that's
want.
not work. No.
Yeah.
So listen and ask questions.
Yeah,
Like, so
and
it's
listen,
really-
but not slavishly. I'm
Yes.
not looking for somebody who does everything, but I'll tell you a story from my
I love
past, which
stories.
was, well, as at my age, I find I'm like my grandfather was when I was young, and I mostly communicate through telling stories. I mentioned that I started PowerSoft in Boston, and my first venture investors in an earlier iteration of the business, the lead investor was somebody who became my model for venture capital investment. He came from an operating background like I did. And we started out in a very different business from where we ended up. We started out in manufacturing applications. We ended up in development tools. But, and he led our investment in 1983, and we didn't go public until 1993, so it was 10 years. But when we did, he gave me a gift, which is he gave me a collection of all of the quarterly reports he'd given his partners in his venture capital firm to read. And so I started reading them, and they were remarkably similar in the early days. They would start out with another challenging quarter for the company, or another disaster for the company.
Another disaster.
Or, and then it would at the end always go, but Mitchell has a plan. And it went on and on like this. And fortunately, by the time I read all these, we were very successful. But
Good.
so I asked him, I said, how did I keep my job through all of this? And he said, and this is where this comes from, you always listened. You were always open. You didn't do everything I told you to do, but you always listened. And he said you were always transparent. You were always honest. And I never got surprises. If anything was a problem, he told me about it.
It's
So
very good.
that's
Yes.
exactly what I look for in an entrepreneur. So it's an interesting combination of skills, market knowledge, background, but a lot of it is character.
You have to be transparent. Like
Yeah.
it needs to be a very open and transparent relationship between like entrepreneurs and.
Absolutely. And there are many entrepreneurs, unfortunately, who do not trust venture capitalists as a category, because
Yes.
either they've had a bad experience or they have just heard stories.
It seems that Nowadays it's like each side is one side of the table, like.
Well, that's the wrong way to
Yeah,
do it and the
you
wrong way
have
to
to
view
be
it.
together, yes.
Although there are probably, I'm sure there are people in my industry, venture capital, who deserve that kind of attitude, and there are probably entrepreneurs who deserve it too.
Yes.
But I can tell sometimes entrepreneurs come in here and make presentations, and you just get the sense that they don't really trust venture
they're
capitalists,
doing,
and somehow they think venture capitalists are out to cheat them or screw them. And that's not, if you come into the relationship with that attitude, then it's probably not going to work. So there's a lot of things that I can coach in an entrepreneur and a founder and a CEO and advise, but I can't coach character.
Okay.
And so if somebody doesn't have those characteristics of openness, listening, transparency, and integrity, I can't teach them that, and I don't want to do business with them.
Do you have a lot of gut feeling when you're talking with other entrepreneurs? Like, oh, okay, there are numbers, you see the projections and so on, but do you let your instincts tell you which way you should go?
Absolutely. Yeah. If I would hope after all the years I've spent in the industry and doing this, that my instincts are very important. However, that I don't do anything based all on that.
Yes.
So my instincts may tell me this sounds great. I'm really attracted to the idea. I really like the people, but we still do diligence. We still check it all out. And
of course.
One of the great heartbreaks from time to time is when it's kind of like you fall in love, but then you find out that something bad about it. So there's times when I've really liked a company, I really like the entrepreneur, I really want to do it, and then we do due diligence, and either the idea doesn't check out with the diligence, or perhaps the checks we do on the people don't check out as well as I would have hoped. So that does happen from time to time.
Yeah, venture capitalists also have their hearts broken.
We do. Oh, absolutely. It's very disappointing.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to compete to invest in a company, and sometimes you don't win, and that's heartbreaking too when you do that. But
And are you from here in San Francisco, or you're from somewhere else?
I'm from Boston, and
Okay.
so I was born and grew up there, and I started my company there and lived there until 1996 when I moved out here to be the CEO of Sybase.
And which is the main difference that you can see from Boston and San Francisco? Do you see a lot of difference in their mindset of the people?
Well, as cities and as areas, they're very similar.
Okay.
Have you ever been to Boston?
Not yet.
Yeah, well, I hope you get there. In many ways, it's it's a university city. There's a lot of colleges and universities. They're young cities.
Yes.
And they're both obviously ports and on the ocean. When I started in software in Boston in 1968, the Boston and the Northeast dominated the computer industry because it was the era of mainframes and mini computers, and that all came out of the Northeast. And so gradually over time that shifted. So it first shifted during the workstation era when in Boston we had Apollo Computer and Sun Microsystems was out here. And ultimately that was won at that time by Sun. And then with PCs, everything moved out here. Okay. So part of the difference that's happened is that the center of the industry in computing and software is now out here.
Yes.
So that kind of addresses the difference today. If you look at Boston today, although I've invested in Boston, I'm on the board of a company in Boston. The most dominant industry in Boston technology now is around life sciences. MIT, which was a computing university in a way when I was there, is now a world-class life science university. And although there are still some great companies there, the bulk of the action is out here, and the bulk of the talent is out here. So for instance, it's really hard to get great marketing executives in Boston. There are some, but there aren't enough to go around.
Oh, okay.
So that presents the challenges. Now the difference in the sort of attitudes is Boston continues to be somewhat more parochial, somewhat less open. Everybody talks to everybody out here. We call it networking.
So
that's less the case in Boston. People tend to be a little bit more keep to themselves. By the way, this isn't just in technology. This is just generally true in the people. The West Coast is probably more social, more open, more friendly, and the East Coast, although it has its great strengths, is probably a little bit more conservative. Venture investors are different on the two coasts. That venture investors in the East Coast are maybe a little bit more conservative. They and the venture capital industry, just like the software industry, has moved to the Bay Area. At least that's the largest center of the software industry. So has venture capital moved here. You have firms that started in Boston, like Greylock and Battery Ventures, that are now mostly, or primarily West Coast firms that have the center of gravity has moved out here.
Yes.
So
we have a complete ecosystem here.
And that's exactly what it is. That we have all the parts of the ecosystem out here. And we have the money, we have the talents, we have the lawyers and the accountants and everything you need to start a company. And there's an ecosystem of helping startups. We have the incubators, and on any night you can go to a lot of events and webinars and seminars and panel discussions about startups, and it's what we do out here.
Yes, and you can't even keep up with everything.
No,
it's a lot going on all the time.
That's right. And when you meet young people in young country, when I go and speak, give speeches or go to panel events and everything, people come up to you afterwards, and they're very eager, and they really want to do. Everybody out here wants to do a startup. It's like in LA, everybody wants to be an actor or an actress. In the Bay Area, everybody wants to do a startup and be an entrepreneur.
Every time you're in an event, then everyone rushes to you at the end of this event. How do you feel about it?
Well,
saying, hi, I have a startup.
But that's why I'm there. That's why I'm there.
Yeah, okay, you were expecting.
I am there in that capacity. And so one of the things we try to do here at Winblad that some other VCs do, but we try to make a point of it, is we try to help everybody we talk to. So I mentioned the number of companies that come and present to us, and a much smaller number where we actually invest. Our goal here, one of the most frustrating things that entrepreneurs feel, is they go to a meeting with VCs, they do their presentation, and then they don't get any feedback. At the end, the venture investor just says, well, that's very interesting, thank you very much, we'll think about it, and we'll get back to you sometime, and then maybe you never hear from them.
And you never know what was wrong. I think this
right.
is the point. Appointment. Yes.
That's right. And so we try to do that differently. So we try to give real feedback.
Good.
Now, I mentioned the numbers to you. In many cases, we will, if I don't think in that meeting that this is something we're likely to invest in, and it may be because didn't turn me on. It may be that it's off base for our focus. It might also be, this is true in most venture capital firms, that I know I don't make the sole decisions about what companies I lead investments in. It's a partnership decision.
Yes.
In most venture partnerships, it's unanimous. The whole partnership has to agree. And so I, as a result, kind of know what our partnership would like and not like. And I'm not beyond selling to my partners, but sometimes I will say that I will know, this is an interesting business, but it's not something that our partnership would go for. I try to tell people that at that first meeting, so that they know where they stand.
Yes.
And that's the complaint I hear from so many entrepreneurs. After the meeting, they don't know where they stand. And the problem on the VC side is that the venture investors never say no. It's always been said that the hardest thing to get from a
Yes.
VC is no,
It's
not
no.
yes.
Yeah, it's over there. Maybe if it gets interesting, I can call you again.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the problem is that the VCs always want to keep their options open, you know?
Yes, yes. I was
and-
reading about it this week, yes.
Yeah, and so, very frustrating for the entrepreneur. So we try to tell the entrepreneur exactly where he or she stands. And we try to give them real constructive feedback
Okay.
about the presentation, the form of the presentation, the content of the presentation, the style of the presentation.
Yeah, only
and-
about the presentation, it's already a lot because it really means that in the next speech for another firm,
Right.
that they are more aligned.
Yeah. So we try to give them that kind of feedback. If many times we tell people that we think that this is too early for Series A investors and that it's more akin to seed investing, sometimes it's a little too late for Series A.
Okay.
They've raised money already, and so, or more money than seed money, and so we try to do that. And you mentioned, people coming up after a speech or a panel discussion, we try to be helpful in all of those things. So if there's something we like to have a reputation for, it's that. Somebody once wrote online that the best VC experience I ever had was getting turned down by Winblad.
Oh, this is great.
And so we're proud of that, and it's something we always try to do.
It's very nice. Well, thank you a lot for all your advice. It was incredible. I was
Pleasure.
going to have questions about my company, but now I already have all their answers. It's very good. Very good. Very good.